Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the PMMA market landscape for the fourth week of July 2026. If you're managing procurement for these essential acrylic plastics, you know, the kind that go into literally everything from car parts to everyday electronics, you already know how absolutely crucial timely data is. We've got a really interesting alignment of forces this week, so let's dive right in and see what's actually going on out there.
Okay, let's dive into this. We're pulling our insights today directly from the latest intelligence report by Polymer Bazaar. When it comes to swift, accurate market intel on price, prediction, and profit, they're pretty much the definitive source. The data we're looking at today paints a highly compelling picture of a market caught in a total tug-of-war. And their on-the-ground reporting is going to help us perfectly map out exactly why that's happening. Now, I want you to keep this question in the back of your mind as we go through today's explainer. How do geopolitical shifts and sluggish demand impact your PMMA procurement strategy today? We're currently seeing a massive collision out there. On one side, we have glaringly weak downstream demand for acrylic products. And on the other, the unpredictable, volatile dynamics of global crude are pulling the strings on feedstock. It's a real high-stakes balancing act for anyone buying right now.
Section 1. Feedstock and Regional Trends.
So, to really understand this tension, we've got to look at the hard numbers driving these trends. 10,400. That is the current MMA feedstock price in RMB per metric ton. Just take a second to process that figure. We're seeing a definitive rise in feedstock costs. It's kind of fascinating because it perfectly illustrates the core pressure point for manufacturers right now. Even when the end-user market isn't pulling its weight, the raw materials required to actually produce PMMA are getting increasingly expensive. It's literally squeezing the market from the very bottom of the supply chain.
So how are different regions reacting to all that pressure? Well, it's honestly like night and day. Look at the China bazaar. Demand is definitively sluggish. Because of those rising feedstock costs we just talked about, buyers over there are in absolutely no mood to build up their inventories. They're holding off. But then you contrast that with the Indian bazaar. Over in India, we're actually seeing a slightly active spot bazaar with some minor price adjustments. There's a totally different pulse and a completely different level of engagement between these two major hubs.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the hyperlocal breakdown within that active Indian spot bazaar. Mumbai prices are currently sitting right between 220 and 225 rupees per kilogram, while Delhi is tracking just a bit higher, between 225 and 230 rupees per kilo. Oh, and a quick, very important reminder for your procurement calculations, these figures strictly exclude GST. It's a tight spread for sure, but tracking these micro fluctuations gives us a fantastic window into the immediate regional supply and demand realities.
Section 2. Navigating the Indian Bazaar. The Buying Pulse. All right, so we know the regional prices, but what's the actual psychology of the buyer right now? Well, the primary market driver is strictly need-based procurement. Processors just aren't speculating. They're not stocking up for a rainy day. And why is that? It's because downstream demand is weak and end-user consumption is completely subdued. Unless a processor has an immediate, concrete requirement on the factory floor, they're keeping their capital securely in their pockets. But wait, prices aren't frozen. Not at all. Spot prices are actually facing marginal, almost nervous fluctuations, and these are driven heavily by the constant volatility in global crude oil and the feedstock bazaar. Basically, every single time global crude twitches, it sends a ripple right down to the PMMA spot market. It's like an external pressure cooker that buyers can't control but constantly have to monitor. When you combine that weak downstream demand with the unpredictable ripples from global crude, you get this resulting atmosphere of absolute caution. The overall buying sentiment remains incredibly guarded right now. And it's exactly this collective hesitation that's putting a ceiling on the market, limiting any major runaway price changes for the time being. Everyone is effectively just waiting to see who blinks first.
Section 3. Strategic Purchase Recommendation.
So, we've got the data, we understand the psychology, and we clearly see the external pressures. What do we actually do with all this information? Boom! There it is, straight from the analysts of Polymer Bazaar. Geopolitical crisis might lead to higher prices, so we suggest buying. So the crucial point is this. While the day-to-day demand might feel sluggish right now, macroeconomic storms gathering on the horizon, specifically looming geopolitical crises, threaten to disrupt supply lines and spike crude oil even further. The window to secure materials at these relatively contained, albeit fluctuating spot prices might actually be closing rapidly.
If you're charting out your inventory strategy for the next quarter, you really cannot afford to ignore this warning sign. I highly recommend you grab the full, detailed PDF report directly from Polymer Bazaar. You can find it at polymerbazaar.com/future-trend/PMMA. Or, hey, you can just call their team directly at +91 937 54 24365 to align your specific procurement needs with their deep market intelligence.
I want to leave you with this one final thought. The market is quiet right now, sure, but it's a very cautious, very fragile quiet. Will you secure your inventory before the geopolitical ripple effect hits the spot bazaar? The data points to a storm on the horizon, guys. How you prepare today will absolutely dictate your profit margins tomorrow. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Stay sharp out there, and I'll catch you next time.